Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We'll just wait a couple more seconds as people log in. Great, so let's start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone from wherever you're calling from around the world, and welcome to today's HNPW panel hosted by UNHCR on diverse careers in security risk management. I'm going to start with wishing Eid Mubarak to anyone celebrating and still joining us today. And also want to take a moment to mention that our thoughts today are with everyone in, from, and having ties with Sudan. To our colleagues, know that our security colleagues inside and outside the country are currently working tirelessly to support you and your families in these uncertain times. My name is Cynthia Kezabir-Kundavi, and I'm honored to have been invited to moderate this panel. Let's start with a little bit about me. I have been working in the aid sector for about 9 years, most of which was in Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the Middle East in various sectors, such as emergency health, mine action, and camp coordination and camp management. I am now Senior Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer with UNHCR, with portfolios focusing on race, equality, and equity, and LGBTIQ+ inclusion. I'm particularly excited to hear from our panelists today for multiple reasons, but I'll start with this. I believe that highlighting the importance of diversity in everything, including in field security sector, is not only acknowledging the added value of our individual uniqueness, but also giving space for operational considerations along the lines of diversity. Who we are makes us experience the world differently, which leads to specific needs, but also specific risks when we are deployed. Understanding this will undoubtedly allow us to better provide life-saving services to colleagues, but also to communities we support around the world. At UNHCR, we are actively involved in pushing for a diverse security team internally, but also within the UN security management system. We want diverse profiles, backgrounds, skill sets, and expertise to help us solve the security challenge of today's environments in which we work. Today's security environment is unprecedented. Conditions caused by the pandemic in 2020 have increased civil unrest and economic instability, shifting geopolitical structures, have renewed armed conflict, and further set in protected conflicts, natural disasters, and violent extremism. Humanitarian workers and UN personnel continue to work in increasingly dangerous and complex environments to help those in need. With this in mind, we need to be creative, innovative, agile, and bring forward security risk management solutions. Doing things we have done in the past is not necessarily effective or no longer is fit for purpose. The UN security system must evolve. This is where diversity can support an evolution towards a system we all aspire to become. So with all of this said, we are joined today by senior leadership from UN Women, UNICEF, and UN Department for Safety and Security, UNDSS, to explore the strategic leadership vision surrounding diversity, supporting security risk management, a constantly evolving field of work within the humanitarian and development sector. In the interest of time, we have put their biographies in the chat. And without further ado, I would like to turn to Paul O'Hanlon, who is the Global Security Advisor for UN Women. Thank you for being here, Paul.
Thank you very much, Cynthia, and welcome, colleagues. It really is a privilege to participate in this discussion today, and I'm extremely happy to do so. Hopefully, I won't say anything that is controversial, but I really will be quite blunt in some aspects of my input today.
Well, this is welcome. Let's shake up the status quo.
I like that. I like that. And in fact, I mean, one of the questions that we frequently hear is why diversity? As a question, why do we need a diverse workforce? And I'd suggest that for those listening and those that will listen to the recording, I think you need to ask yourself the question that if in your organization you're still being asked why, or in your role you're being asked why, and maybe this is, because I don't want to open that discussion here, but this is a discussion you then need to have, because without having that discussion and recognizing the benefits of doing so, then of course you're not going to move forward. You know, it's clear that a diverse workforce provides a better product. It's obviously resulting in a relatable product to a wider market. So, you know, it's very, very simple in that. What I'd like to do is just mention some very short points on statistics. Now, please note these statistics that I'm going to note. Please take them as indicative because there are multiple sources, and I've tried to gather many of those together to sort of give us an indicative aspect. So if you look at the overall number of women working in the security sector across the world, dependent on its location, we're looking at less than 1% up to 19%. Now that's quite a catastrophe. Even if we take the higher number, we're talking only 1/5 of the workforce are women at this time. And I know we're discussing here the whole diversity aspect, but please remember I come from UN Women. The other sad aspect is that many of the roles that are completed by women tend to be at the lower level of the security functions. But what I found quite interesting when doing my background and research on this, which was a long time ago, to be honest, that 25% of roles completed by women in cybersecurity, that's 25%, which is much higher. And I thought that was quite interesting as to why, and if there was a correlation as to why. I can give you police figures. Police figures globally, they've incrementally increased because there's a lot of recruitment drives. But again, dependence on location, we're looking between 5.1 and 42%, especially in the Scandinavian countries. Military doesn't perform quite so well. We're looking for 0.3 to 20%. But one of the things that I want to do is I want you to, if you would please, note something. And that is the fact that, you know, when you compare those three, you can see that the UN and, if you like, NGO forum is performing quite poorly in comparison to militaries and police forces around the world. And I think a point of note and something that's been observed is the fact that within both the military and the police, there are a variety of career paths, if you like, and types of roles within both of those functions, and that are much more varied and also defined and recruited under those streams rather than this frontline operational. So if you can keep that in mind, I would appreciate it. Yeah.
Definitely, and building on that, if I can ask you, in this context, what are the strategic priorities of UN Women in terms of diversity in security, workforce, and operations?
Okay, before I do, I just want to latch onto something that you actually mentioned, Cynthia, in your opening, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And then I'll go to our strategic points. I've just mentioned some statistics. There's lots of other reasons, and I'm sure if we spent the whole day talking, we wouldn't cover them, as to why there is such a deficiency within the security sector. But I just want to leave you with a quote for you to think about whilst I'm talking further. From Henry Ford. But not only was it from Henry Ford, the previous USG, UNDSS, actually made this quotation during a group that I was involved with him. And I was quite pleased to hear that. And the quote is, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. Now, Cynthia, I know you mentioned that you said we should always do things that we did in the past. It's the same thing. And I think that is going to lead me to where we're going with what we do. It's our strategic priorities. In that it's got to be changed. We've got to see change. If we just keep doing, we get what we get, don't we? So from UN Women, our strategic priorities are very simple. Our overall mandate is very clear. You know, the UN Women is the organization dedicated to gender equality, the empowerment of women. We look to establish and accelerate, if you like, their progress on that worldwide. But we actually have a triple mandate. You know, that's our vision statement, if you like, what we do. But our triple mandate works for normative support with governments and member states, UN coordination, and I know that our UNDSS colleagues and other agencies, funds and programs are greatly supported by a SWAT team at UN Women, but also the operational activities. So from a UN Women perspective, that's our key priority. However, if we sort of take that down to security risk management, within our at UN Women, within our organization, across the organization, we look to actuate our mandate across all of our functional areas. And today, obviously, we're talking about safety and security team. But we also, as I've just mentioned, try to do this across the wider UNSMS. And I think that the last is the engagement. So my team, on behalf of UN Women, but on behalf of the UNSMS, we have full engagement in UNSMS development and information platforms. And I know both Florence and Paul, who are on the call as well, are fully aware of this and cognizant of the fact that my team actively engages, particularly within the IASMIN, but also the IASMIN influential working groups, platforms, and we help to support change policies, processes. But above all, I think one of the things that we really try to do is to change or improve, if you like, attitudes, because we feel that if we change the attitudes of individuals, then the rest will just follow us as it should.
Thank you for that. And I mean, working in the DI space, I completely can relate to the fact that it's not only policies, but it's also practices, and practices are influenced by attitudes. You can have the best policies, but if attitudes don't change, policies will be interpreted in a way that still yields the same results. And progress is slow, I can imagine. It's complex, it's convoluted, and it's in different contexts. How do you feel progress is going? And can you talk maybe on certain maybe wins or progress in terms of impact that you've seen over recent years?
Most definitely, and I acknowledge the complexities. Although, to be quite honest, when you actually drill down, it's not complex. It really isn't complex. You know, if I want to employ somebody that sells ice cream, and I need to look at what I need, and then I look to recruit a person that can fulfill the task. And again, you know, if you look at best practices, and maybe I can sort of list some here as how we have moved forward within UN Women. And if I start by telling you that the UN Women Security and Safety team, actually 60% of our workforce are women. Okay, and there's no other agency within the UN system that can come close to that. Yeah, and we need to ask ourselves why that is. Yeah, and I would say that, you know, as I've mentioned already, we work with our colleagues in the other agencies, funds and programs. But I think the main thing is we look to develop a career path that starts with the recruitment process for particularly non-security or limited experience security individuals. And there's a reason for that. There is a reason for that. And if you consider the statistics I mentioned earlier, yeah, if we carry on, if you like, fishing, if you like, is one of the comments I like to use, in the same pool, then we've got to extend to the fact that that pool is very limited. It's very small. I've already given you the statistics across these experience levels, processes. So we need to look for change. So one of the career paths that we utilize, in fact, our main career path, is we focus on internships, followed by consultancy processes, and that enables us to attract, if you like, this really diverse workforce. And when I say diverse, obviously the gender diversities, but also ethnicities, cultural norms, and things like this allow us to do that. And what we've also done is we've encompassed and really embraced, if you like, the point I made earlier about how the military and the police forces around the world are able to offer careers within the security function, but doing different things. So we're able to focus on that. So not targeting our vacancy announcements and obviously the backgrounds terms of references, focused on frontline operation. We focus them on a specific function, which allows us to bring them in. So we obviously adjust our TORs, and which is the vacancy announcement. And we do try to focus a lot on skill sets and not experience. Yeah. So we don't want somebody with 20 years experience as a military gate guard. That doesn't give them maybe the skill sets for what we want within the UN system, and definitely within UN Women. So we do that with the TORs. We then have creative testing. So our testing doesn't follow the basic knowledge of security testing that you see in many other organizations around the world. Our testing is on creative thinking, communication skills, and thinking like this. And similarly, our interview processes and questions, we really ask those to elicit the desired character traits we want, and not just a basic security knowledge. Yeah, coming back to that, if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. And
Exactly.
we don't finish there either, Cynthia. Just very simply, after that, we then we fast track education. So for these colleagues, obviously, because they don't have extensive experience or background in the function itself, we fast track education course. We look at capacity building, once we have them in the role as well. And we start that right at the beginning. And we target specific courses. We apply a mentoring process within the organization, within the team, so that follows them. We look at support mechanisms that continue through the early and, in fact, the whole career within UN Women. But also we try to do a lot of, mission experience, where we'll actually have that mentoring process where somebody will travel with our if you like, new to the system colleagues to make sure they're there and with us at that point. Yeah. So really, it's developing a career path that educates, capacitates, empowers what we see as young, intelligent individuals who are motivated, they're innovative. And if I can just say one last thing, if I can, as a sort of wrap up, which is, I've been asked by many organizations to come and talk to their security teams on how they're to help them to recruit women. Yeah, obviously with our mandate. And I've done that, but I think sometimes it's difficult to when I go, because people are a little bit, is that it? But if we balance the field, if we balance the playing field and actually focus on the traits and skill sets that we require, yeah, you will see that quite often women actually elevate themselves anyway. They're attracted to the role because of how it's presented. They're attracted to the role because of the development, career development that's in there. They're attracted to the role because of the prestige, and they will apply. And in fact, I know Florence is on, and hopefully I'm not stealing something from Florence's comments, but the recent UNDSS recruitment drive actually saw that per capita of applicants, women outperform men in all categories. So really, it's a matter of balancing the field, and then we reap the benefits. Back to you.
Balancing the field and we reach the benefits. I really like that. And not only that, I hear something that is, yes, focused on career development, but focused on, it's human-centered. And I think there's a lot of food for thought for that. So I hope if you can stick around for the questions. I'm sure that our participants will have many for you. Thank you for that, Paul. I want to now turn to Florence Poussin, Deputy Director of the Division for Regional Operations at UNDSS. Thank you for being here with us, Florence. And yeah, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Cynthia.
I want to start with, I have a couple of questions for you. The first one being, UNDSS is actively making efforts to increase diversity in its security workforce and operations. And I know it's been talked a little bit before, but could you talk to us about, to tell us more about what's going on right now?
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much, Cynthia. I think it's what I would like to describe a bit for you, the journey we've been on actually since, about 10 years now. And even before the UN itself in general, started working on gender. I must say that this was triggered by even people in the room here, how we look at, gender and diversity in our workforce. There was a lot of cooperation and partnership with UN Women, but also with the other agencies of the UN security management system. And the first thing that the UN security management system did is this, policy on gender consideration in security management. And that was basically, an eye-opener for everyone, that we really need to look at it from a different perspective, take a gender lens, at what we are doing, and not only look at the numbers and our workforce, but also how we do operations, and taking this into consideration. So that was the start. Then that was followed internally within DSS by the elaboration of a gender strategy. And this gender strategy basically has three main goals. One is to change the organizational culture to enable gender and diversity. The second one is to work towards gender parity. And the third one is a goal, to enable gender inclusive security operations. And these three goals are reinforcing, right? We cannot work on one goal without working on the other goals. that was a strategy that was initiated in 2015, and that's why, and I'm saying that because the UN started its gender strategy in 2017. So we were actually, very conscious about the challenges that we have with our workforce, the impact it has on the field, the image also that we, project as security. At the basis of this, with this strategy, there was really a flurry of activity in a very, 360, if you want, direction. A number of training that were conducted, on unconscious bias, for instance, workshops, barbershops for men. So discussions, only with men. Workshop also with our workforce. We have regional workshop on a yearly basis. We always had, a discussion on gender. We also created a full-time position of gender advisor and then gender and inclusivity coordinator in DSS. I mean, it's mobilizing resources and, and putting some pressure in the system to work on this. We elaborated also, we identified gender focal points at the field level to have both, a bottom-up and also top-down, approach on this issue. And we collaborated also. I mean, again, the collaboration with UN Women, the collaboration with UNICEF and other UNHCR, the other agencies in the UN system who are very, much in the lead on this. We worked with them through working groups to work out our policies, gender manual, aide memoir, and so on and so forth. At one point, and I would like to mention that here, especially because it happened at the HNPW 2 or 3 years ago, when during a meeting with GISF, where GISF presented a people-centered approach. And we realized that all the efforts that we were doing in addition to gender on, LGBTQI inclusion, on disability, on racism, all of this was actually, encompassing in this new strategy. I mean, in this new wording, if you want, of a people-centered approach, to security operations. So we discussed that within the DSS, within the ISMN, and actually this people-centered approach is now, entrenched in our framework for accountability for the entire UN system, and that's also the direction we're trying to go in DSS. So what are we doing in terms of the now? I mean, if you want more recently, where are we in our journey? The good thing is we recently did an evaluation of our gender strategy, which was very, very helpful. Because it helped us, take stock of the impact of this strategy. And one thing that I can tell you is that, the first goal of the change to the organizational culture is a long way to go. Of course, that's the most difficult, thing to change the culture of a large organization. But we realize that this is something that is off track. We're not, quite there yet. We have done a lot of things to change this. But the impact is not still there. And there are some progress on flexible work arrangements, for instance, because thanks to the pandemic and the fact that, we had to move and change the way we are working. But there are some, there is still entrenched misogyny in the department. There is still, overreaction on and fears on the impact of this gender strategy on personal, promotions, career development for male, etc. All these things that we have, we are realizing, if you want. Paradoxically, the best success is that we have encountered is on gender parity. Overall, we have increased the number of women working in security. When I started in DSS, when we had statistics on the representation of women in the organization of the secretariat, I think the department was really the last one in the women's representation in the department. We are making slow progress, but we are making progress indeed. From 18% to 24% of the workforce is now composed of women. We have made some progress in at the higher levels, D1s, P5, but not that many, not that much progress yet on P3, P4, and P2, P3, P4s. And we're trying to change that. That's why we launched, Paul mentioned that we launched a big, recruitment campaign in 2022 that is concluded now, and we're going to see the results very soon before the end of June. So we'll be in a better position, to analyze the result of that. But really, the goal, we changed the terms of reference of the job announcements. We changed the process, the technical tests, the way we were doing the interviews as well, to enable, more diversity. And as Paul mentioned, we are pretty confident that will help us in getting more women in the workforce, but not only more women, a more diverse workforce, more diverse skills in the workforce. What is important here is we're looking at complementarity. We're not going to replace, the whole workforce in one go, and we want to, and that's what Paul was referring to also before. Work on career paths and how we can support that, because it's not one, you can enter with when career is very complicated, and that's where I think our added value is, and our added value will be in the future.
Yes.
Sorry?
Please go ahead. Please continue.
No, we have had some success in there, and it's not like glowing success once again, right? We're from 18% to 24%. We're not there in parity, but even close to parity, of course. But in comparison to other even agencies within the UN system, because we started earlier, we are progressing, and that's something that is comforting in a way, that we are going into the right direction. Where we have also had some successes is with in terms of gender consideration, in security operations. And again, just the start, of a journey, starting with the policies. We are now looking at how we implement the policies and the impact of these policies, in the field. So we have started a systematic survey of the measures that we are implementing, in the residential security measures, security risk management measures, and for not only for women, but also for the whole diverse workforce that we have, including people with disability. So we have started this survey, and it looks like we are. We're still, it's a baseline survey. Basically, it's where we are now, with approximately, a little bit more than the majority of our field duty stations who are effectively implementing the aide-memoire, for instance, but in most duty stations, they are now gender considerations are included, in residential security measures. That's now, almost everywhere, at all the duty station. We have seen also good lessons learned, good best practices, if you want, in some countries, and that has been recognized also by our colleagues in UN Women. Best practices have been highlighted, for instance, in terms of recruitment in our duty stations in Beirut or in Vienna. It's specific to the workforce in this headquarters location. And the way they have targeted, women to increase their workforce. We have seen also a lot of good things related to training in Colombia. And in Pakistan, we also highlighted, a number of best practices. I just come back from Pakistan and had the pleasure to meet, the DO and the team there. Everybody's so engaged in, making sure that gender is included in security operations. It was really, really comforting to see that. And see also, it was not just on words, it was, everything that they are doing. So just to give you a couple of examples, they have established, gender advisors in at the ASMT level. So at the regional level, they have, gender advisors who go on missions to assess the locations, for instance, before missions. They have meetings with the SMT and they report, on what they are doing and the concrete actions that they are doing. And they have also meetings with the DO on a quarterly basis. So it takes leadership, at this level to make this happen. And talking to the women there in very, remote locations, very difficult circumstances, the fact that there is a special, attention to how women are, their accommodations, their travels, and so on and so forth, they really appreciated it, and it made an impact. So I think it's something that I wanted to highlight. So I'm going to stop here and ask you if you have any questions for me.
Thank you so much for this, Florence. There's a lot of things that you shared that I feel that are super relevant to the conversation, also in terms of best practices. But I think there are different things. When you mentioned, a people-centered approach and realizing that it already encompassed other areas, I think that's one of the challenges that we have in organizations regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, or is sometimes we are siloed. But if we focus on people, then we build ourselves, we build the capacity to tailor to everyone as our understanding of diversity expands. And I think that that's something very rich that you shared among all the other things. So thank you for that. I do understand that you may not be able to stay for the entire session, but I think there's a lot of food for thoughts, and if there's remaining answers that come from the participants during the Q&A, we'll make sure to send them your way. So thank you for this, Florence. I'm gonna go to Paul. Paul is the Principal Security Coordinator for UNICEF. Welcome to the roundtable.
Thank you. How are you? How is everybody?
Good. Thank you so much for being here. We talked a little bit about the strategic priorities for UN Women, for UNDSS. Do you want to talk to us a little bit more about the strategic priorities that UNICEF has put in place?
Yeah, thank you. It's good to see. Well, I don't see anybody, so I'm not sure if people told you to turn your cameras off, but if people have cameras on, it would be great to see some faces. And it's hard to know who the audience is and what they want. So what I thought I did is I want to put a little bit of a different emphasis to add on to what's previously said. And so let me take this human aspect and the people aspect and see where it goes from there as our priority for diversity in UNICEF security. So Paul mentioned at the beginning that, if we have to explain what the goal of diversity is, then, but let me just try to state it and show where I'm going, right? So the assumption is that a diverse workforce is going to improve the outputs of your team, right? And when it comes to security, what are the most important outputs, right? Really, it's creative and flexible, of course, effective advice and solutions, interactions. So it's much more about ideas than anything else, if you think about it, right? That's meant to enable the organization achieving its goals. And for UNICEF, that means results for children, right? So my premise of what I want to get to is that creating a diverse workforce with all the different skills and backgrounds and experiences is not enough. If what those diverse individuals can bring is not allowed to come to the fore, right? If those creative ideas and all that cannot see the light of day. So what I want to emphasize is what is the sort of management and leadership responsibility to nurture that diverse workforce for its success. And for me, that's what one of our big strategic focuses on. Because if you talk about person-central approach, then this is not a mathematical problem. This is not about numbers. This is about people. This is a human issue, right? And for human teams, this means interactions and leadership and that kind of thing, right? So that's my premise of what I wanted to say. So creating this diverse workforce needs to create the conditions for the value of the diversity to come to the light of day, to come to the fore, and therefore to have a better impact on the results in the field, right? So a couple of concepts I have, right? So it's about maximizing the leverage of these potential value of these individuals, and what culture can the leadership create so that this can happen. So there's ways in which we can help this to come, and also ways in which we can hinder it, and we need to be aware of that and lower the hindrance and improve the help to get the freedom for these people to work together in a way, right? So really, this is about creating a team, and leadership has to do this, that is safe and interacting and trusting, having rapport so that they can really do the best they can. And so I want to focus on one aspect of it, because if we're all diverse individuals who bring all different sets of skills and also different weaknesses and things that are we missing, right? And I have this great expression which is perfection is highly overrated. And so diversity means imperfection everywhere, of course. And can we have a team where imperfection can flourish? Because we can't get to good ideas and good solutions if we don't also go through mistakes and bad ideas so this system, and Paul and Florence know, we all work in interagency. We create teams of people for which we have no authority, and how much effort do we put in to ensure that we can make mistakes, we can go down bad roads, we can make errors, and the trust and the rapport and the connection allows those mistakes to go, and there's no disconnection between the people. This is the key, right? And when we go through the bad ideas, we get to the good ideas, right? And when we go through mistakes, we get to the solutions. And leadership needs to set the tone for this, set the safe space for this diverse workforce to feel like they're living in a family, if you want, and needs to set the example as well by making mistakes and showing that there's no blame associated with small mistakes. Now, I'm not talking about misconduct or negligence or any of these significant bad things, but that's what I think our big priority is for us, is really how do we have a leadership culture in our organization that really allows that diversity to do the best it can with getting the results and the ideas forward. Let me just leave it at that for now and see if that was anywhere helpful. Just trying to tag on a different approach.
But definitely useful, and I do think that you know in our DI world we call it inclusive leadership, and understanding that beyond just having a room of diverse people, we need to be sure that not only we look at equity and where they come from, and what I think Paul said that earlier on as well, like focus on the skill set and how to hone this. But in order for us to yield to the results, yield to the impact, we need to provide a space and environment that is nurturing enough for people to be able to give their contribution in all its imperfection, as you see so well said. It is, you know, and I think Florence mentioned it as well, you know, culture takes change. There's also sometimes this feeling of you know, people thinking that it's a zero-sum game. If you give to some, it means that you take away, which is not the case. It's just reshift our role in how we interact with each other, and we're looking for complementarity. But how's it faring for you at UNICEF? And are there wins that you want to share for people that are listening right now?
So, I mean, not just within security, within all of UNICEF, this issue of person-centered, inclusive culture of nurturing people is a big issue that we're going on this last couple of years. But the issue is it's a double-edged sword, right? Because every time you try to fix a problem that humans created, you have to fix it without blaming those who created the problem, because we have to understand the complexity of everything, right? And so, as you know, Florence mentioned some of the sort of I won't say, well, to taboo or difficult areas around, if we want to say gender issues, needs to include everybody, including the men, as she said, that are seen as part of the problem. We have to keep everyone involved. So in UNICEF, if we have bad managers who created a hostile or something culture, we have to be able to fix that without stepping on them as if they're no longer humans when it happens, right? And so that how to build everyone up. There's a great expression, I think it's from Dostoevsky: we can't improve a person by repelling them, right? So we need to constantly engage with people, even the ones that are to level where their imperfection has created problems for other diversity. So that's the hard part, and it takes courage of leadership to do so. And the more pressure there is on, whether it's at the higher level or in the middle of a crisis that we're going in Sudan, the quicker it will be for people to forget about other people. And that's why, and that happens if you've built a bank of trust. You can withdraw from the bank when you're no longer contributing to it. But if you don't have that trust in the middle of a crisis, your people are just going to leave you. So I don't know. That's the hard part of fixing it, even though, because people are part of the mistakes, including the lack of diversity or the lack of inclusiveness in that culture. We need to keep those people who involved when we're fixing it as well.
Thank you so much, Paul. There's so many thoughts that came to mind, but I read somewhere, the difference between calling people out and calling people in, trying to find that, that tone and that approach to be able to acknowledge where we are and our own responsibility, without alienating the people that we want to work with and we need to work with in order to bring that diversity of mind, of thoughts, of practices. And there's this quote that is on anti-racism, but I think that it applies on anything that is linked to, fighting exclusion and ensuring inclusion. Exclusion and ensuring inclusion it's from a Nigerian author who says, the beauty with anti-racism is that it's your commitment to fight racism is in all its form, including within yourself. So when we're talking about creating allyship and including leadership, it's about acknowledging that some of the issues we may have been part of, but our commitment is fighting around us and within us in order for us to bring an environment that is inclusive for everyone. And I mean, I think we could keep going, but I'm looking at the time. I want to thank you three, Paul, Florence, for your clear passion on the issue, the rawness, the humility, and the honesty, and also your commitment to being role models in modeling that change. I think it's inspiring for all of us, and also it's crucial in shifting the narrative of like organizational sometimes slowness or resistance to change, because the desire for change is there at every level. We just need to make sure that we connect the dot in creating that narrative and embarking everyone, regardless of where they are in their journey, in shifting culture, right? And I want to thank you for that. I also want to invite, to welcome our new panelists. We're joined today by colleagues working in a wide range of roles within the security sector, including colleagues from the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue and UN Women and IOM. Mariam, we'll start with you. Welcome to this roundtable.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And Mariam, you work for the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue, and could you explain to us a little bit, why is diversity important in your role, and especially as a woman in security?
Absolutely. Exactly as Cynthia says, my name is Mariam Saadi, and I work for the Center of Humanitarian Dialogue as an analyst, specifically on Northwest Syria. And what this means in practice is that I spend at least half of my day thinking about how Putin, Erdogan, Assad, and various other armed groups, or the head of armed groups, think. And I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that these are all men. And what's equally ridiculous about this is that Northwest Syria as a context is approximately 60 to 70% women and children. And a lot of humanitarians that work on Northwest Syria, and actually Syria writ large, are women humanitarians. So this isn't necessarily surprising when analysis, or at least the analysis we do on war and violent conflict, is often analysis that centers on or around power. So your questions are, who has power, who wants it, who wants more of it, what are actors' aims, positions, interests, all vis-a-vis power. So you're very kind of realist, neo-realist lenses on power. I do see gender analysis brought into this, and when I do it, usually is brought into the fold in two different ways. And they try to answer different questions as well, because the questions you ask are equally important. So first, when I do see this analysis applied to gender, it's what are the specific gender risks that face different genders? So this is the analysis that you get when, there's two different sexes, and we look at what are the distinct or differentiated risks that these two different sexes face. And then this analysis is very good because it does bring to attention what the specific and disproportional risks that women or females face. So that's one category. And then when we move to the other, this is a bit more critical. It looks to ask, where are the women? So this is when analysis focus on making women more visible. So it's asking, where is the woman in the context of war? Let's try bring them from the invisible into active agents that are either directly or indirectly participating in war. And then from this stems the understanding, that women should be represented and that their lived experiences are important. And I do want to make very clear that I think both of these types of analysis are super important. They're super interesting. They can be super critical when done right. But I often think there's another, I don't want to say another form of analysis, but another way to use gender in analysis that I think is a bit less obvious. And that's gender in analysis, and the understanding is gender as power, or as a power organizing structure in and of itself. And sorry, I'm going on a bit of a monologue, but this is what I want to get to, because I think we've talked a lot about the two others and how to bring in women. But when you see gender as socially constructed, as power organizing, and also as dichotomous, hierarchical, and deeply simplifying, then you can understand why it's for some reason taken to be common sense or natural or a given. And then this becomes dangerous because you create simplistic assumptions. And then this is, and why I think this is important is because in analysis, I see this applied to understandings on other types of power as well. Cynthia, you quickly mentioned race, but there's other forms of powers as well. So meaning that I see similar assumptions about power and different types of power that are unquestioned and just assumed. So in my job, what I actively try to do is avoid thinking that there are any assumptions. So nothing is natural, about why anyone has power. And this is a very basic understanding that makes me and my analysis, I think, better. It makes me ask different questions about power. So beyond just how it's produced, I'm asking, how is it reinforced? How is it consolidated? How is it differentiated? How is it inherently unequal? How is it used? How is it abused? On multiple levels and in a myriad of ways. And this makes me better at my job. And that's what an analyst's job is, just asking the right questions and being skeptical about assumptions and any fact that's presented as a given instead of understanding what it is, which is power, which is dynamic, it's intersectional with other forms of power, it's fluidity. And basically here you're inviting complexity. And anyone can ask these questions. I don't think, you have to be a genius to do so. And you can adopt this thinking. And I will say, though, that I think women, and the more diverse the woman is, or the more diversity of women you involve, are especially adept at this kind of, or adopting this analytical lens to examine power, not because they're predisposed to in any way, because we're not predisposed to be spectacular at anything in specific, but because of the relative position of power we hold in this socially constructed hierarchy that makes us more attuned and more adept at looking at different forms of this. So I think this is what we should be using to our advantage. And really, this is what diversity brings to the workforce, but specifically to good analysis.
Thank you so much for this. It's fascinating. And I really appreciate that deconstruction of an acknowledgement that nothing is natural, but also it's constructed. You know, how do you think that you and your intersection of different diversity markers has allowed you to see the work this way? Do you, like, how do you see personally yourself interacting with this?
I mean, I can talk a bit about myself. I always feel a bit conscious about speaking about myself. I mean, I'm a woman, I would say, obviously, but sometimes it's not so obvious. I'm Syrian, and I equally work on Syria. That brings me good insider status and good outsider status at the same time. I was educated outside of Syria. I am a woman, I'm an Arab woman, I speak Arabic, and why I try to say that is I think each of us bring, and the complexity that each person brings certain advantages, or possibly, I don't want to say disadvantages, but things that might not be useful in a certain context. But I might, I'll add as well that for me, particularly the asking questions part and the complexity of my own identity makes me feel uncomfortable speaking about any other woman as well, because it is highly, highly complex. And that's why I kind of, my whole mantra is you ask questions and you ask things that, you know, people might assume, but you shouldn't assume right off the bat.
Thank you for that, Mariam, because I not only for your self-awareness, but the awareness as well that you bring to that conversation. I think that what you've provided us is, you know, to a certain extent, almost tools of how to approach these big questions that we were discussing before. So I hope that you can stick around for the question and answer. I'm sure that many will have some for you. And I'm going to quickly continue the conversation with Aina Chopin, who works for UN Women, and you know, ask you a little bit as well about your role at UN Women and how did you get in the role you're in today?
Hi, so thank you for having me. My name's Aina, and I work at UN Women as the Security and Safety Mainstreaming and Program Criticality Advisor. And a large part of my role is communication, so bringing more visibility and to inform our UN Women colleagues, as well as the UN Security Management System colleagues of security and safety. So a bit of my background, despite having a degree in international relations, I've always had a strong interest in communications and experience in this area. I joined the UN Women Security and Safety Services team as the communications focal point. And despite in the organization, we saw huge steps in creating a communication strategy through animated videos and the use of our intranet, which is our internal communications platform. But as a team, we identified a need for more security and safety communication products and outputs, essentially a strategic communication strategy that had longevity. To do so, I worked on this, I talked to colleagues, I discussed things with our team as well as other teams about what they expect of the security team, as well as what ways they like to receive communications in, and thus developed a strategic communication strategy and a vision for how security and safety communications would look like at UN Women. This included a podcast series, explained documents, developing on the intranet, and emails and articles. I worked solely on communications for about 9 months, after which I had the privilege to kind of also incorporate more policy and programmatic sides of things at UN Women as well. My role now is more widely encompassing as I work on mainstreaming security and safety in the organization, and that's my role today. This still has a significant component of communications, as mainstreaming focuses on including security and safety in all aspects of what we do at UN Women. And thus to do this, our colleagues should know what security and safety is and what we can provide them with, and are aware of the considerations they should make in their work.
Thank you so. Okay. Thank you so much for this. And I'm assuming that when you say you work in security, people don't necessarily imagine the path that you've had. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's unique in your career in security?
Yeah, so that's, I think, what I probably bring to this discussion is what you mentioned, the fact that people don't usually think of communications people in security and the role that they play. So whilst we do see a lot more UN agencies hiring communication specialists for security, I think this is something that can be overlooked, is the role that communications plays in security. And it is vital to the work we do, because we need to raise visibility and encourage our colleagues to make security considerations. I think that a lot of people wouldn't expect that you can have a role in communications in security. And I think this is the most unique part about my career, is the fact that people wouldn't assume how important and closely interlinked the two are. It's important that we have communication specialists to disseminate information in a way that's engaging, because information from security teams is essential for all of our personnel and colleagues to consume. But this can only be done if the information is presented in an engaging manner. If we have emails that are boring, if we have policies handed to people that are lengthy and they aren't as interested to read, we fail to encourage them to read it, even though it's so important for them. So presenting this in a more engaging manner, I think, is very important.
Engaging, informative, one of the biggest feedback that I get when I engage with different employee groups, especially when they're either underrepresented or traditionally marginalized, is, when it comes to security, is I want to be able to make an informed decision. I want to be able to, we say that when it comes to security, it's also, we are responsible for security for first and foremost individually. And in order for us to be able to do that, for anyone to be able to do that, is to receive that information in a consumable manner, so that it is a crucial role. And maybe that's something that externally people don't necessarily see, but this is how we know what is going on. So yeah, so thank you for being here and for highlighting this, one of the diverse career in the field of security. And I hope that you can stick around for Q&A as well. So last but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce Mahika Atkins from IOM and Security Training and Policy Officer. So Mahika, if you can take a few minutes to talk about your background and how you got in the role that you're in today.
Thank you, Cynthia. Hi, everyone. I actually, what Paul mentioned earlier, Paul O mentioned earlier about the strategies to bring in more diversity in particularly women, looking at the recruitment process. It really resonates in me, because I feel like that was my journey in terms of my security career. So I've been with IOM for 19 years now, and within those 19 years, I've been working in the field of security for 15 years. But meaning I wasn't really a security, working in the field of security. I started as an intern in a labor migration project way back in 2004 in the Philippines. And then after that, I kind of switch around. I took on, as a locally recruited personnel, I took roles as a receptionist, administrative assistant, operations assistant, name it. I've done it because I wasn't so sure what I wanted to do with my career. So one of the things that brought me to the field of security was that when there was a vacancy notice in IOM in the Philippines, and it was an administrative assistant, and looking at the terms of reference of that, I said, I can do this. I feel like, I can do the job. But then when I saw the unit, it's staff security, suddenly I questioned myself, okay, no, maybe I'm not, because I don't have the security background. I don't have, military background. So even with that, so the word security actually intimidated me for applying. And it is through the encouragement of my manager and previous managers to say that just apply and see what happens. And I did apply, and in 2008, that was my first position as a within security. And so that made me think of like how many women out there are, who are qualified or who are eligible to apply in security positions, but just because they think that security is such a technical, when they see the word security in whether the name of a department or division, that says that, maybe this is something that I don't belong to because I don't have the background of a military or a police. So starting from there, then I worked on to working in headquarters in Geneva as a global security associate. And then 11 years, within those 11 years, I continuously evolved in terms of my position, mostly doing at first, security related resources management. But as, I was mentored on other things like policies, trainings. I eventually started taking on other unique portfolios like gender mainstreaming and security risk management. But that is something that, I was mentored and I learned through different people. And so when it was actually, so my experience as a trainer didn't really come until 2016, when I was, given the opportunity to attend a training of trainers for the Women's Security Awareness Training. And I never delivered training before, or learning events. So I wasn't sure if I was able to, be a security trainer again, because when I think of being a security trainer, I said that you need to have an extensive, knowledge or background on security. But then this is something that I, when I started training more people, when I started having more experiences, I realized that, this is something that I can do and that I really like and I can invest my time on. And so having that experience and training, eventually I moved to a position specific on security coordination and training delivery and what I do right now. And then that's the other hat or the other part of my position. And the other one is on policy, but I specifically also look after or support my organization in the people-centered approach, mainstreaming and security management on that one. But again, that's the same story where that is something that I was mentored on, and my development on knowledge and skills on that one was because of the support of the people around me. That have given me, and that's how I built my knowledge, skills, and attitude towards that.
Thank you so much for this. I think there's a lot of food for thought, because what I'm understanding is that there was an opportunity for you to showcase your competencies that could be transferable to the field of security, and the leadership that allowed you and accompany you to develop the specific skills needed to talk technically about security, but acknowledge all the capacity that you had and allowed you to develop a passion in that field, which is something that is also important, especially thinking about the statistic that Paul was saying in the beginning, that you look at the sector outside in the outside world, and it's male dominated, and that could have prevented you from applying when you're mentioning that you had doubts, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And exactly, Cynthia. And I also didn't realize that, when as an outsider, when I wasn't working in the security sector yet, I didn't realize that there are so many, there are other areas, so many areas of security. And it's not just, the field security officer position. And, there are other areas that I do have the competencies to be in those positions. So that's also a factor.
Thank you so much for this, and with the way that you entered this field, and the work that you do right now in training, and some of the assessment that you were mentioning as well that you're doing. Why do you think that diversity is important in that field, and what do you think is the added value of that in the work that you do today?
Yeah. So I like what Paul also mentioned the other Paul, Paul Farrell also mentioned about, the culture of security. And I personally, for me, I see security is also is a culture that is made up of different people, beliefs, backgrounds, practices, experiences, and to get the best out of a learning event or a training or an activity is to have all these elements together. I'm not going to go technical on this, but two of the models that we use as a trainer in the UN security management system is what we call one is the Malcolm's Knoll of assumptions, an adult learner, and Dale's cone of experience. So basically, according to Knowles, is that one of the most important factors that adult learners bring to a learning environment is their wealth of experience. Whether they are good or bad experiences impact a learning environment. And Dale, on the other hand, believes that adults learn when they are teaching each other. So as a trainer, I find that these models are very true. So a diverse training team and participants will always have richer discussions, and that is what I always see, whether they're good or bad, and better outcomes and sharing of best practices and lessons learned. So really, my experience in the learning is that learning from discussions is often more effective, valuable, and people tend to retain the knowledge and skill, the learning objectives when you have this rich discussions rather than what we show them on the slide decks. So really, and even for me as a trainer, I find that I learn too in these learning environments with diverse training team and participants.
Thank you so much for this, and thank you, Marikar, thank you, Mariam, thank you, Aina, for not only talking about your own individual careers in the field of security management, but also your perspective on how you and diversity in general can bring an added value to the work that we do. Looking at time, we're going to go to Q&A. And I will, first of all, want to thank you, all panelists as well, to be here today. If you're still around and available to answer questions, please remain for the next 15 minutes. And the chat box is open to participants. You can also raise your hand and ask a question directly. And I invite you to introduce yourself and either mention whether the question is open to any panelist interested to answer or to somebody in particular. So I see already one hand up, and it's Sunnat. Please go ahead.
Hello, Cynthia, and all the esteemed panelists. Greetings of the day. My name is Somnath. I'm the Field Security Officer for UNHCR Northeast Nigeria Operation, speaking from Maiduguri. I'm not switching my video because it's connected with the mobile internet, and it's the net connection is very poor. It's not a question, rather a comment, and or rather an introspection. Just to draw your attention with an anecdote, I'm completing my tenure here in Maiduguri, and within next few months I'll be assigned somewhere else. And my position is being taken over by a woman colleague, thanks to UNHCR Field Security Service. We are having more female colleagues in the field, in the security role, as well as the management, UNHCR management in Nigeria operation. The moment this woman colleague was appointed in my position, I started receiving some colleagues, and they come with a peculiar smile. Hey, Somnath, you are going, and we are getting a female colleague in your position. It's like some of them are not believing that in a place like Maiduguri, we should have a female colleague officer. I'm just trying to giving you an example from the field. Someone, a very senior UN security professional once told me that our role as a security officer is like goalkeeper in a soccer field. Nobody remember you how many goals probably you saved. They always remember you if you missed a penalty and ultimately your team lost. And being in the field in places like Congo, South Sudan, and and even in Nigeria, and you know what is going on in Sudan, sometimes security officers play a very crucial role. So I don't totally blame these colleagues, and some of the colleagues who came to me are also female colleagues. They are asking the question. So I don't totally blame them. Probably this sort of references is drawn from the fact that in security, especially in the field, in critical locations, in high risk duty station, a lot of things depend upon the security officer. So I again refer to Paul, both the Paul and then as well as even you mentioned attitude. Florence did mention about less number of female colleagues in P2, P3, P4. So basically, probably it will take some time to bring that desired changes at the ground level, at the field level, and definitely it will come. Things are changing. Things will improve. Percentage will increase. What I wish to see is that apart from sort of mentoring and guidance, like I remember in my military and police career, we had a proper 6-month mentored program. So when we passed out from the academy, we were put under another officer, an exemplary officer who used to teach us everything. You know? So that sort of Paul did mention about mentoring. So that sort of mentoring program, and not only mentoring by the security colleagues, there should be some sort of safety, some sort of guidance net or umbrella, like the managers, the people, the national colleagues who have been there in the duty station for many years, the DSS team who are there. Everybody can play a role in making life comfortable and settling down for a female colleague, and let her understand that she can do everything the other guys are doing. And probably when people see that changes, when people see that thing happening, these attitudinal changes will slowly come in the field. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Somnath. And I think you put the finger in your commentary, but I'm going to turn it into a question for leaders who are on the call. There's so much effort that we can do in making recruitment and diversity, but when we talk about career planning and we talk about belonging and being able to contribute to the full extent of ourselves and retention as well, it's about the whole experience. And while we're working on culture change, on attitude change, we also have colleagues who are currently there that face a lot of bias, a lot of doubts, and I think, and as you said, Somnath, it doesn't. When we talk about bias, it doesn't come necessarily from only men, from women too. It comes from what we have been exposed and been taught as the norm. So I mean, maybe I'll start with Florence. Do you have a couple of advice or comments or things that you can think about when you hear this in terms of making sure to accompany female colleagues as they're more and more represented in the sector?
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. I actually have a lot of anecdotes that I can, bring on the table on how the biases on security and how people portray people working in security, of course, doesn't apply to women, and that's I faced that at the beginning of my career, and I continue to face that every day, to be honest, and that's going to be for my entire career. Each time I go in the field and I meet with the security team, with the government officials, with anyone, they first look at the male colleague who is accompanying me until they realize that I'm actually the person that they are going to meet and talk to, right? So it's just, I mean, from so I'm pretty used to it, but I think it is something that of course our male colleague and everyone else, including ourselves, can help with, just by by their attitude and the way they they carry themselves, if you want, and support the team. So I don't have any specific recipe, but I think it's always something that is on our mind when we're women and working in security, and it's probably something that men also need to also have in their mind to support the women that are working with them.
Thank you so much for this, Vals. Paul O'Hanlon, do you have any thoughts?
Lots of thoughts. I'll try to be brief. I think I mentioned it in my original input about the attitudinal change that's required, and we can call it culture if you like. I'm not quite sure it's culture because it crosses various cultures, this attitude. I can again go into lots of statistics for you in relation to, but listening to the question from Somnath and these points, I think, I mean, if we listen to that now in this forum, I'm sure all of us are thinking, what difference does it make that it's a woman? Quite honestly, what difference? You know, the fact that Somnath mentions, you know, the security advisor or specialist or whatever they be are required to deal with an awful lot of things. Again, why does that matter that it's a woman that's going to deal with it? Yeah, I mean, I'll give you one very basic statistic. You know, well, I can talk a lot, but a lot of the discussions and times I talk to female colleagues in security and outside of security, because you have to evaluate this to ascertain as to how you can best encourage that diverse aspect to your teams. There's a whole lot of emotive perceptions, and here we're talking about perceptions again. There's a lot of emotive perceptions. There's fear, you know, there's danger, there's hardship, there's all these things that people think about. But if we take on a basic statistic, that across the security sector globally, when you take out military, because obviously the military role is to engage in combat, when you actually take out the military, I'm sure my military colleagues will say it's not, it's to ensure safety and peace, etc. But you know, if you all don't have guns, then you can't fire them, can you? But anyway, the point is, if you take out military, less than 2% of actual engagements in the security theatre of incidents require any form of physical engagement. It's all here. Everything comes from here. And your ability to, as Paul was actually pointing out brilliantly in his input, that we're trying to develop that process of communication, yeah, the thought process, the ideas, I think was the big point that Paul was trying to raise. That's the point. And if you've got that ability here, please, you know, police forces and militaries around the world aren't encouraging female candidates and women to join because they just have to tick a box. They're doing it because they're seeing the benefit of that, yeah? So again, why is there an issue? It's attitudes and perceptions. And we, as Florence has pointed out, we, as being part of this process, we need to dispel those. We need to make it normative that women are in security, and that's the end of it. You know, and they do a pretty good job doing it. Apologies for my profanity. I'll pass back to you.
Thank you so much for this. And I know that, Paul, you had also a point that you wanted to add. Please go ahead.
A couple of things here. Sorry, I actually had to jump onto another thing on Sudan, and so I apologize for my lack of active listening. But I want to hop onto something Mariam said about listening. That's why I mentioned it, right? We have a bit of a dilemma here if we think about this, because we talk about diversity only about groups of people, right? Women or this or that. We're doing what's needed because we're looking at the workforce, but we're also front loading potential biases, right? Because if you look at our faces now and our backgrounds listed in the chat, we got Paul O'Hanlon, we got Florence, we got me. There's nothing, even the top of the iceberg of what any of us are, right? You need to know the person, right? You need to go down and listening, interact with people, get to know them, right? So if we're talking about let's say a woman coming into a workforce where it's, I mean, is the solution really to only talk about her as coming in as a woman, or is it about a human being that we need to get to know and talk about, right? And interact, and that's where the solution is. And so I do understand that writ large, the group discussion is important, but really it is often potentially counterproductive when it comes to real inclusion at the individual human level, right? And so, and I just want to add one thing from a security point of view to So Matthew, we know for many years and interacted for a long time in the field, even before he joined security in the UN. This issue about the goal, when the goal goes, we miss a goal and we get blamed, right? One of the things we're trying to do in UN security, including in security risk management, is redefine the definition of what the goal in or goal out isn't. And what is important is reframing the success of security, not only about saving lives of people, but also enabling programs. So when are we accountable for the goal we let in when we didn't enable a program? You see? And so this is also important reframing of what the problem is and what the solution is. So I just want to say that about really my view as a leader and as a teammate with other people, the solution to real acceptance and inclusion is getting beyond the surface level of background, what we look like, and get to the individual. And the only way to do that is to listen to them, talk to them, trust them, get to like them, build rapport, and build human connection. Over.
Thank you so much for this. And I think it's really important. Not only it's our responsibility, but globally, all of us, but going beyond just labels, because that's who we are. And as you rightly pointed out, so we can try to summarize a career for a panel in a few lines, but that takes away from the wealth of experiences, and that somebody has. And if we only stick to that, we're doing ourselves a disservice globally. So thank you for pointing that out. We're coming to the end of this panel, but I just wanted to double check if there was not an additional question from the participants. I'm checking the chat, and feel free as well to raise your hands if you feel like unmuting yourself, of course. Just checking really quickly. Okay, well, if not, I would ask, all the panelists, leaders, and the incredible women that are part of all this Field Security Service who came and talked about a little bit about their careers today. If you had 2 recommendations for us moving forward in creating and fostering diversity in the sector, what would it be? So parting words, a couple of recommendations. And I will let you unmute yourself if you want to go first. And
yeah, I want to go first because I have to leave quickly.
Okay, please go ahead, Florence.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. I just wanted to finish closing by saying, that I don't think that there is any magic trick in this. There is not one solution. As you said, it's not complex. It's like it's a lot of effort and an entire strategy, if you want. I mean, at least at the level, if we want to have an impact, it is a sustained effort. So what I would say is, my advice is both to maintain some kind of a combination of leadership, maybe, finding the leaders and the champions of this cause, but also being a leader yourself, and the individual contribution in this effort is so important. So we all have to, from time to time, reconsider what is our contribution to it, and what is our effort, not only for the organizations, for the better, good, but also for the people around us, as Paul mentioned, the people really close to us, that we can help in this regard. So that would be the final words. And thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for attending, and thank you for joining us and being able to stay until the end. We understand that it's a very busy week, a very busy day for you. So thank you again for attending, Florence. I'll move to Paul Farrell.
Sure, thank you. I also have to run. Thank you once again, all of you, for the invitation and the opportunity to speak freely here. My parting words would be this: if this is a human problem, the human solution is humanity, right? I would caution analysis of power and violence. Think about the role that tribalism plays in that, right? When we start attending our whole identity to some group and not think beyond it, this is where problems happen. Let's go beyond this to a human solution. Let's listen to each other, open our hearts to each other, continue to engage. And it's imperfect, it'll never be perfect. That's part of why it's diverse, and let's fix it at the human level. That's my plea. Over.
Thank you so much for this. Paul?
Thanks. I've said it twice. I'm going to say it again. You always do what you always did. You'll always get what you always got. That's my third point. You've got to change. There's got to be change in everything that you do if you want to move forward. And to do that, colleagues, and I'm pleading with you, go fishing in a different pool. Don't be looking for the same pool to give you something that you're not getting. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul. Mariam. I don't know if Mariam, Marika, and Aina, but Mariam, yes, if you have any parting words, recommendations.
Sure, I'll repeat what I said earlier, which is fostering diverse thinking. So the recommendations of that would be asking better, more complex questions, questioning assumptions and givens, welcoming complexity. And I think just by doing that, you will be accepting more diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this, and thank you for joining us. Marika?
Yes, thanks. So maybe my parting words are to those women who are thinking of switching a career to security. Just apply, and apply, and then see what happens. What's the worst thing that can happen is that, you know, that's not an opportunity for you, then another opportunity might come.
Thank you so much. Very wise. And Aina, please go ahead.
I think, thank you for having me here, but I think it's to make room for creativity, because if you don't introduce new ways of thinking of things and new ways of doing things, things won't change. I think similar to what Paul said.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who were able to attend this session today. I think there was a lot of food for thought, and I want to thank all the panelists for their honesty, their willingness to bring in the necessary discomfort for us to reshape our thinking, to question what we haven't questioned before, and commitment to bringing about the necessary change in order for us to yield the results and outcome that we all desire. So again, thank you so much. It was my honor to be here today. So thank you to Bridget and Liwei for inviting me. And in a way possible, shape, or forms, if DEI can support the work that we're doing, we're also present to continue that cooperation. So have a good day, morning, afternoon, and evening, and stay in touch.